Let's talk tariffs, a tax on imports, and one of the oldest tricks in the government's economic playbook. Tariffs are basically a fee slapped on goods coming into the country, and they've been around since the earliest days of American history. But what do they actually do, and why do they matter so much today? Think of tariffs like a cover charge for foreign goods at Club America. If you want to bring your products into the party, you've got to pay at the door. The higher the charge, the harder it is for outsiders to get in. The idea is to make imports pricier, nudging you to buy American instead. When foreign products cost more, homegrown goods start to look like a better deal, at least in theory. The government collects this money, supposedly protecting U.S. industries from cheaper foreign competition. It's a way to give American factories and workers a fighting chance in a global marketplace that's often cutthroat. But in 2025, the Trump administration used tariffs not as a precise tool, but as a blunt instrument, slapping them on nearly everyone. Suddenly, tariffs weren't just about steel or washing machines, they were everywhere, affecting all kinds of products. The goal? Make foreign goods expensive, hoping to fix America's economic woes and bring jobs back. The idea was that if imports cost more, companies would have to hire more Americans to make things here. The argument: other countries have been taking advantage of the US for too long, so it's time to hit back, hard. This was about more than economics. It was about national pride and standing up for American workers. Tariffs, they claimed, would give the US leverage in trade negotiations. By making it costly for others to sell here, America could force better deals and fairer terms. But here's the catch. Tariffs aren't paid by foreign countries. They're paid by American importers, who pass the cost to you. That extra fee at the border doesn't just disappear. It gets baked into the price of everything from electronics to clothing. So when you hear about a tariff on Chinese electronics, it's not China paying, it's you, at the checkout. Every time you buy a phone, a TV, or even a toaster, you're footing the bill for these policies. This misunderstanding has turned a complex economic policy into a political football. Politicians argue about who's winning and losing, but the reality is often lost in the noise. In reality, tariffs are a tax on Americans, not a penalty on foreign governments. They show up in your grocery bill, your online shopping cart, and your monthly budget, whether you realize it or not. And that's the fundamental flaw at the heart of this whole saga. Tariffs sound tough, but in the end, it's regular Americans who pay the price, all because the government said so. President Trump couldn't just wake up and tax the world, he needed a legal excuse. In the US, the president can't simply impose sweeping tariffs or change trade policy overnight. There are checks and balances, and Congress is supposed to have the final say on taxes and trade. But the administration was determined to find a way around these limits. So the administration declared a national emergency, citing the trade deficit, drugs, and migration as urgent threats. By framing these issues as a crisis, they could unlock special presidential powers that are usually reserved for true emergencies. It was like calling 911 for a leaky faucet, a flickering bulb, and a cat in a tree, an over-the-top response to problems that, while real, hardly rose to the level of a national disaster. The tool they used? The International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEPA, a 1977 law designed for genuine threats to the nation, like terrorism, nuclear proliferation, or hostile foreign regimes. It was never meant for routine trade disputes. Using IEPA for trade deficits is like using a defibrillator for a cold, dramatic, unnecessary, and a bit absurd. It's a powerful tool, but wildly out of place in this context. Still, the administration insisted that these issues, trade, drugs, and migration, were all part of a single, massive crisis threatening national security. They argued that extraordinary times called for extraordinary measures. Solicitor General D. John Sauer even claimed, "With tariffs, we are a rich nation. Without tariffs, we are a poor nation." This bold statement tried to justify the sweeping use of emergency powers. By invoking IEPA, the president could bypass Congress, even though the Constitution clearly says Congress controls trade and taxes. This move raised serious questions about the separation of powers. With a stroke of the pen, the administration sidestepped lawmakers entirely, leaving Congress out of the loop on a major economic decision. This set up a dramatic constitutional showdown, executive power versus Congress, with American businesses and workers caught in the crossfire, uncertain about what would come next. The stage was set for a high-stakes legal and political battle over who really controls U.S. trade policy, and what counts as a true national emergency. With the emergency declared, tariffs hit hard and fast. On April 5, 2025, a sweeping 10% tariff landed on nearly all imports, no country spared. It was like charging everyone at the club, even the staff. Then, Canada and Mexico got hit with a 25% tariff, despite being America's closest trading partners. This made no sense given how intertwined North American supply chains are. China faced even steeper tariffs, up to 145% on some goods, aimed at severing supply chains and forcing companies to find alternatives. The administration believed chaos would lead to a better deal, but the disruption was immediate. Tariffs briefly hit 57 other countries, but a market crash forced a quick pause. The strategy maximum disruption, hoping a new world order would emerge from the mess. In reality, it was more like smashing a piñata and hoping for candy, but mostly just making a mess. The legality of these tariffs was questioned from day one. Critics argued the president overstepped, using emergency powers to impose massive taxes, powers that belonged to Congress. IEPA was never meant for broad economic policy, opponents said. Tariffs are taxes and only Congress can tax. The administration insisted the crisis justified their actions, warning of economic disaster if courts intervened. Over 3,500 companies from small importers to Walmart sued, claiming illegal taxation. The case became a test of presidential power. Where does executive authority end and Congress's begin? The answer would shape the future of American economic policy. Legal challenges moved fast, and the courts weren't buying the administration's arguments. From the very beginning, judges across the country seemed skeptical, questioning whether the president's emergency powers really stretched this far. In May 2025, the U.S. Court of International Trade ruled the tariffs unlawful, saying the emergency didn't justify a global tax. The court's opinion was clear. The administration's sweeping use of IEPA was a step too far, and the law simply didn't support it. The court warned that letting the president use IEPA this way would erase Congress's role in trade. If unchecked, it could set a precedent that would fundamentally shift the balance of power between the branches of government. The administration appealed, but in September, the Court of Appeals upheld the ruling. IEPA doesn't grant this kind of tariff power. The judges emphasized that trade policy is Congress's job, not the president's alone. Despite 2 defeats, the tariffs stayed in place while the administration appealed to the Supreme Court. The legal process was slow, but the financial impact was immediate and widespread. Businesses kept paying and the economy remained in limbo. Importers faced mounting costs, and uncertainty rippled through supply chains, leaving many unsure how to plan for the future. The administration pushed for a quick Supreme Court review, hoping for a final answer by year's end. Both sides knew the stakes were enormous, and the pressure was on for a resolution. For now, importers are stuck with the bill, and the country waits for the highest court to decide. Every day without a decision means more uncertainty for American businesses and families. The stakes, billions in tariffs, the balance of power and the rules of American trade, hang in the balance. The outcome could reshape how the U.S. government handles emergencies and economic policy for years to come. The legal battle is far from over. The next chapter will be written at the Supreme Court, where the final word on presidential power and trade awaits. While lawyers argued, the economy took the hit. Critics called it a turbulence tax, and the numbers back it up. Over $72 billion in new duties have been collected, all paid by American companies and ultimately, consumers. Prices rose on everything from groceries to electronics. The job market stumbled, only 22,000 jobs added in August, unemployment up to 4.3%, and manufacturing jobs fell for 4 straight months. The tariffs, meant to help U.S. industry, actually hurt it by raising costs. Companies like Walmart and Nike warned of higher prices and supply chain chaos. Some firms started buying up potential tariff refund claims, betting on a Supreme Court reversal. Trade experts urged companies to keep records, just in case a massive refund is ordered. The result: chaos, uncertainty, and a toxic environment for investment. The turbulence tax is real, and it's hitting Americans hardest. Now all eyes are on the Supreme Court. The justices must decide if the president's use of IEPA for tariffs was legal, or an unconstitutional power grab. If the court strikes down the tariffs, they'll be lifted instantly, and the government could owe up to $1 trillion in refunds. Treasury officials warn this would be a fiscal disaster, one of their own making. If the court sides with the administration, it sets a precedent. Presidents could use emergencies to impose taxes and bypass Congress. That would shift huge power to the executive branch, changing American governance for decades. The court's conservative majority might favor the administration, but some justices are wary of unchecked presidential power. A ruling against the tariffs could reaffirm Congress's authority and check executive overreach. Whatever the outcome, the decision will reshape the balance of power and the future of U.S. trade. The stakes couldn't be higher. No matter how the Supreme Court rules, the aftermath will be messy. If tariffs are struck down, businesses will scramble for refunds, blowing a hole in the federal budget and overwhelming customs. The administration has backup plans. Other laws could be used to reimpose tariffs, triggering more legal fights and uncertainty. If the tariffs stand, higher prices and disrupted supply chains become the new normal. Companies may shift supply chains, but inflation and slow growth could linger. Presidential power over trade will be permanently expanded. The global economy's interconnectedness means unilateral moves cause lasting damage. Trust is eroded, businesses are wary, and consumers pay the price. The road back to stable trade policy is long and uncertain. There's no easy exit from this tariff superhighway.